affects the cost of goods in the country. But the government has said that this measure is for the best because it will encourage domestic production to meet domestic demand. And now, government has also accused neighboring countries of using the Nigerian market as a dump and also of violating ECOWAS rules about goods in transit. So today, let's discuss the policy from all sides, shall we? Let's discuss the policy from all sides. Let's assess its goals, its strategy, and what it hopes to achieve those goals and what it hopes to use as a means for achieving those goals and the chances of success. We're also going to look at the nature of cross-border trade, both into Nigeria and out of Nigeria. And as you hear from the experts, we hope that we're going to give you enough hard facts to form an informed opinion on this particular issue. Now, I have on the show with me the chief economist of Business Day, Mr. Nonso Obikili. He's on the show with us. He's on the phone with us. Our second guest does business at the border. He is the Seme-Border Chapter Chairman of Nigeria Customs License Clearing Agents. His name is Mr. Lasisi Fanu. And he's also joined us on the phone. And our final guest is an expert on cross-border trade. He's the head of marketing, Northern Cross-Border Corridor for Oboh, a mobile payment platform. His name is Mr. Yusuf Haliru. And of course, you, my listener, are my fourth guest. And throughout the show, I want to hear from you. You know, what are your thoughts on the border closure? Do you think it will ultimately help or harm our economy? Have you or anybody you know been directly affected by the closure? Was it a positive or negative effect? That's a question you'll be answering for me as the show goes on. But let me start with Mr. Fanu. How has the border closure affected business for clearing agents, sir?
Good afternoon. How are you doing?
Very well. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. This is Alhaji Bisiri Lasisi Fanu, Chairman and Nanka Seme Chapter. And it has not been easy. It has been rough for every important stakeholder.
I see. And I have to ask the economists on the show, Nonso, is there a link between the border closure and the rise in inflation? Because the National Bureau of Statistics said that between August and September, inflation rose between 11.02% to 11.24%. Nonso?
Well, hello everyone. And yes, of course, there is a link, right? It's basic economics. If you cut off supply and demand remains the same, prices go up. They don't go up immediately, they go up slowly, but they go up eventually. So what we're seeing is the beginning of prices going up. And if the border continues to remain closed, they should continue to go up unless something changes.
But the government says closing the border will give room for local producers to raise production and grow into the market. How long would it take for local production to replace what is being stopped at the border right now?
Well, that's not how economies work, right? Economies are dynamic.
Okay.
Demand, if you take a good like rice, for example, which is one of the reasons why the border is closed, demand for rice isn't standing still. It's growing every year, right? Because every year the population is growing, people are eating more rice every year, and so demand is growing. And supply is also growing every year, right? If you look at Nigerian rice production, it has grown almost every year since 2000 and grown significantly. But demand is growing faster than supply. Now, closing the border doesn't change the growth rate of production of rice, right? It doesn't change anything. If you're a rice producer, you will make more money for sure because prices will go up and your costs might not change. But it doesn't alter the fundamentals. And so the idea that you can close the border once and then you will catch up with rice production and then that's to be the end of it, it doesn't make any sense, right? Because economies are not that. Economies are dynamic. Things keep on changing, demand keeps on changing, and so supply has to keep on changing.
Now, but again, it's also not just agricultural products that are being stopped, Nonso. Processed food and non-food items are also being stopped. So does Nigeria have the capacity to start producing these items in enough volumes to replace the imports?
No, we don't. At least not overnight, not in 1 year, not in 5 years. And I like to think of a counterfactual. Can you imagine what will happen if the government build a border around Victoria Island and says, Victoria Island, you must produce everything you consume? It can't happen, right? Because Victoria Island cannot operate on an island on its own. It has to interact with the rest of the country. It has to import some stuff, export some stuff, trade with people in Kano and in Port Harcourt and even in Ibadan. That's how it works.
Okay.
And it's the same thing with Benin Republic, with Nigeria, with Cameroon. We are very well integrated. There's a lot of goods that flow back and forth from agricultural products to people to basic manufactured goods. And then you can completely cut off half of that process and still somehow continue to survive as it was before is unreasonable, to put it simply.
I wonder if Mr. Fano agrees with you. Mr. Fano, do you agree with Nonso?
I should agree with him because that is a fact on its own, but the fact remains that government should take it step by step. If government refuses to take it step by step, that you want it today, you want to have it today, there must be lacuna, and this lacuna is what people are shouting for. Price increase in the market, yes. If government want to do what they should do, they should make sure that this local is available and cheaper. If it's available and cheaper, nobody will ever think of foreign rice to now being the main cause or main reason for their closure of the border, which is very, 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 to me, security reason given earlier stage fine, but right now it's unreasonable because the people that are actually suffering now are the genuine traders. Not even the issue of rice is by the side. Genuine traders. So that is just it. Whatever policy they do, they should take it step by step. Otherwise, people will get there. They cannot produce from one side and say it will go around like the gentleman has said. That is the simple truth.
All right, Yusuf, we've heard that there is a vast cross-border trade route that goes from northern Nigeria into other countries. Could you tell us how far that network goes?
Okay, the states that are bordering the northern tip of Nigeria, that is Sokoto, Kebbi, Zamfara, Katsina, Kano, Jigawa, Yobe, and Borno. They do a lot of trading between Nigeria and those other countries. First of all, most of the goods depart from Nigeria into Niger Republic, and from there they go to Mali and Burkina Faso. On the other side, they also depart from parts of Jigawa State up to Borno. When there was no insurgency, they moved on from there to Central African Republic, to Chad, to up to DRC, up to Democratic Republic of Congo. So that's how far these trades links go. Now, in regards to this closure of the border, let me just make a small comment. What the government said ab initio was that they want to ensure that our neighboring countries comply with what is called the ECOWAS Protocol on Transit of Goods. Now, the ECOWAS Protocol on Transit of Goods says that every neighboring country, when goods are passing to your borders to the next border, you should have your customs escorting those items coming to those countries to make sure that whoever is importing those goods pays the duty as they should pay. That was the initial intention of government. Now, what we're now hearing is that after having blocked the borders, that the rate at which arms that have been imported are being caught has reduced. In other words, arms importation illegal has reduced, ammunition importation has reduced, drugs importation has reduced. That's what they're saying. And from what security men are also saying, there appears to be a lowering or a reduction in the attack by cross-border bandits in their operations. And then lastly, the Controller General of the acting controller of the customs said that in September of this year, we have realized 115 billion, 115 billion naira in revenues that the Nigerian Customs Service has never, raised in those kind of revenues ever since, we've been collecting revenue. So those are the objectives, and then this is some of the benefits that we have seen.
Being forwarded.
Okay.
Make a comment on rice if you want.
Yes, go ahead. I want to hear your thoughts on rice because
Okay.
the government,
Right.
because the government, the government said that closing the border will give room for local producers to raise production and grow into the market.
Yes.
So, the same question I asked Nonso as well. How long would it take for local production to replace what is being stopped at the border right now?
Yes. Okay. I'll say first of all that, let me just take an example of Kano, for example.
Okay.
We are now beginning to see, market women from Lagos coming to Kano to come and ask for local rice. And they look at the rice and they select the varieties that they think meet their minimum quality requirement.
Okay.
And they're ordering in huge quantities. Now, we're also beginning to see traders in Kano going to farms in Kano and telling farmers, once they look at the growth of the farm and they go with an agronomist who assesses and says, this rice looks like, this party looks like it can produce very good rice. The trader buys up the entire farm and they say, they take it to a local processor, small scale processor, there are so many of them, they take it to them to process into bags and then they brand them and then they go and sell. Now, about 8-9 months ago, a bag of local rice in Kano here was selling for about 10,000, 11,000 naira per bag.
Okay.
Right now, that same bag is selling for 16,500 naira. Whilst the imported one that is still being smuggled, even though at a lower rate than it used to be before border closure, now goes for about 19,000 naira per bag. Now, there's somebody who works with those who bring in this rice illegally. What he said was that they bring them from parts of Niger Republic, and that it now costs about 3,500 naira to bring each bag into Nigeria. In other words, logistics alone is costing about 3,500 naira per bag. So previously, our rice was not competitive. Why was it not competitive? Because the processing takes so much time and energy on the part of the local producers. We don't have electricity. So when you spend so much money buying diesel and doing all kinds of things to produce your rice, the cost of production becomes so high, competitiveness becomes very low compared to the imported rice. So we can see some forceful uncompetitiveness coming on the imported rice, and then local rice is getting better because the farmers are adopting better practices. Now, rice is about 90, 100 days gestation period, and it can be grown both in the dry season and the wet season, especially in the extreme north of Nigeria. So if Keti, Jigawa, Kano, Katsina, those 4 states, if the farmers continue to adopt practices, and we also look at Oboh, for example, major producer of rice, we have seen Cross River. They have, established a huge rice multiplication center that is so mechanized that they can even supply seedlings to all farmers in Nigeria. Nonso has a point that it takes time for these things to change. But I can also tell you, because it's an agricultural cycle, the time frame might be shorter than we are afraid of. It may not be up to 4 years, but I can also tell you it can be in the next 2.5 years. We can begin to see us catching up substantially with the rice demand that we have in Nigeria.
I wonder if Nonso agrees with you. Nonso, do you agree with Yusuf?
Well, for the most part. So everything we see is as expected. But if you have a ban on a product, those who are producing locally will suddenly have a market, and they will to make more profits. And of course, they will produce more. But there's a cost to the economy. For everybody who eats rice, there's a cost to this, right? Because prices go up. And so the question is there an overall welfare gain? Are the costs to this policy bigger than the benefits to the extra rice production? And typically, the costs are more. Now, think about it. If you think about the problem with rice in particular, if you look at our yields from the farm, they are the lowest in the world. They are about so much more lower than India, than China, than Thailand, than everybody else. And that's the foundation. When you now add all the extra costs of processing, that's the reason why our rice is not competitive. Now, closing the border does not change all those fundamentals.
Okay.
Right? Closing the border does not improve yields. Closing the border does not miraculously create better seed varieties. Closing the border doesn't reduce electricity costs. Right? And so what happens is, while the border is closed, you will see, these temporary adjustments, people, trying to make ends meet, trying to, make a situation. But once the border reopens, which it must, eventually, then we go back to the previous status quo, where foreign rice becomes so much more cheaper. And the same thing for a lot of agricultural products. And if you think about it, if a bag of rice can travel from Thailand all the way across the world to Benin, gets transported all the way to Niger, gets smuggled in all to 3,500 naira per bag into Nigeria, and is still competing with Nigeria rice, then you know that the problem is not the smuggling. The problem is the entire process. Right? Now, I think I want to point this out because I think it's very important that we understand why the border is closed in the first place.
Okay.
Because the official line is that we're trying to stop arms, we're trying to prevent smuggling, and that's true. There's a lot of smuggling that goes on, but that's not the reason, and it's also not because of the ECOWAS protocol either. I mean, part of the ECOWAS protocol is the central the CET, which means that we should have the same tariff rates with most of other West African countries, so that the problem of smuggling becomes a non-issue, right? But of course, we've blown the CET out of practice because we've raised our tariffs for most products beyond what the rest of West Africa is willing to do. So if it's about obeying the ECOWAS protocol, we are equally as false as the rest of ECOWAS, as Benin Republic or anybody else.
Okay.
But the real issue here is a macroeconomic one. If you look at our foreign reserves over the last 3 or 4 months, it's been dropping dramatically. I think by the end of the month, we should be under 40 billion for the first time in maybe 2 years. And the reason it's dropping is because our currency is now overvalued. Now, when the currency is overvalued, people want to import more because it means things in the rest of the world are cheaper. If you look at our foreign trade reports, imports from China, from everywhere else in the world, are skyrocketing because imports are becoming cheaper and cheaper and cheaper relative to everything here because our currency is now overvalued. And the government sees, stopping trade as a way to prevent this potential FX problem. And I think that's the fundamental issue here. All the stories about how, ECOWAS Benin Republic is breaking the protocol and we are suddenly stopping, small arms imports, even though we don't actually measure small arms imports. They're all, they're all questions looking for an answer. Right?
It's
the real reason there is that we have a fundamental macroeconomic imbalance that the government is trying to use the restriction of trade to solve, which again is not a sustainable solution.
It's interesting that you bring up measurement, and this is a question for you, Lasisi. If the government has the personnel to close the entire border because it's trying to prevent smuggling, shouldn't it have the personnel to scrutinize goods coming through an open border without closing it, Lasisi?
The last speaker, Mr. Anoso, has said it all. I don't need to repeat all he has said because he has said nothing but the simple truth. Like you just asked him now. They say they have personnel that closes all the border points. Do we need to close the border for genuine trade before we get our result? I don't think the answer is no. Because we have these security people, you tell them you don't want this, tell them you don't want this. They are not supposed to allow it to come in. And that would improve the results you wanted to achieve. So if, say, the importation of rice we are talking about now is still finding its way to Nigeria upon all the security, whatever, because they still find their way. If you go to some area, officers cannot even go there. How will they do it? People start resorting to passing the high sea with rice. They don't care whether the canoe capsized or not. These things are still finding their way where they get to, downtown, through the bush, here and there. If government can send another modality, because this modality of stopping trade and allow people to go with international passport, because you allow people to go with international passports across the border, if they want to close the border, let them close the border in total. Let nobody go closer to the border to have his way out, not to have his way in, before you think about bringing in anything. That will get them a result within 2-3 weeks. And they go back to status quo the way we had before. You see, if they do that, the importers, we don't have this. Some of them are dying. We have a story that about 2 or 3 importers have died because when they are looking at their money that they are loaned from the banks and the credit debit interest.
Well, that's a story we cannot substantiate. So let's try to not be alarmist. Yusuf, I have to ask your thoughts. I'll come back to you, Lasisi. Yusuf, I have to ask your thoughts on Nonso saying that this border closure cannot be permanent. Now, it's currently indefinite. The border closure is indefinite, but it certainly cannot be permanent, like Nonso has postulated. Now, once the smugglers simply resume activities, once the closure activity ends, I mean, there's no way that we can keep it closed permanently, right?
Yes.
Yusuf?
Yes. Nonso mentioned something about the challenge or the difficulty of raising output in a short time. And I'd like to say that, yes, our rice yields have been less than 1 metric ton per hectare, substantially. But I can also tell you that through at least 2 interventions I know of, one of them is USAID, rice yields have increased from 1 to about 4 metric tons per hectare.
Okay.
But there is a place in Kebbi where they are doing 7 metric tons per hectare.
Okay.
This is a record. That's number 1. Number 2, adoption of innovation by farmers is a difficult thing. When you bring something new to our farmers, it takes time for them to adopt. So that also has its own issue. It takes time. Now, I look at it starting from the front of the value chain backwards. Based on what Nonso has said, I'll just say that when price has increased, a lot of traders are going to be interested. When traders are interested, it means they will go to processors and ask them to want price. When processors are interested, they will go back to the farmers. When farmers are interested, what they need to do is that even those who have not been adopting improved processes to increase their yield per hectare, because our problem in Nigeria is that of productivity. Our output per hectare is very low, which means if many more farmers adopt improved practices, there is a likely tendency that our output per hectare will increase, which will take us to a higher output. Now, on the part of the government, I think this issue of power supply is a major challenge. We have seen it in processing and in many other agro activities. So if that power availability is being addressed, then I believe that we can further cut down on the cost of producing rice. So if we increase output per hectare and cut down on cost of processing, I think our competitiveness will tend to go further, higher and higher. Now, what the consult boss has said is that this border closure will remain like this until January 2020, which is just a few months' time. But of course, the way government does their things, I have a feeling when we get to that January, we'll push it forward again to maybe June or July, especially if they see that farmers are increasing output and then custom revenues are increasing. But I think that we cannot close our borders forever, or we should not. We cannot. So what we need to do would be to work with the clearing agents, because they are major stakeholders in this business, and we need to sit with them to determine what is the best way to ensure that most of our goods come in through the top approved channels, and then all duties are paid properly as and when due to government. Once we do that, I believe we'll be moving much forward.
Well, Mr. Lasisi is So Mr. Lasisi is a clearing agent. In fact, he is the chairman of Nigeria Customs Licensed Clearing Agents. He's the chairman of the semi-border chapter. And I have to ask you, Mr. Lasisi, in your experience before the closure, what percentage of trade across the border was legal, and what percentage was illegal?
Yeah. Thank you so much. As before the closure of the border, specifically as you asked, in the first place, we are custom brokers, and we have never been licensed to do anything that has to have a shortfall on the federal government of Nigeria. If we do that and we have any infraction, what usually happens is that they will give you the debit note. If you don't pay it, definitely your license will not be renewed.
Okay.
So go by that. the duties as far as we are concerned are always properly being paid on these goods through semi-border. The thing came to a point when the other borders in the preparation was so much, so high, so porous. Government decided that semi-cracky border is the only border they will allow, because that is the only border, in fact, in the nation as of today, that the scanning machine is still working. See, whatever we do, the scanning machine is working. And whatever we do at this axis of this ECOWAS corridor, is, in fact, is genuine. When you talk of the issue of smuggling, we don't involve in it. Concerning the percentage of business before, now, I think it's more than 60%, but now it's less than 30%. Okay. You understand? So automatically, I'm just saying in a summary form as to that the closure of the border to basic trade, the genuine trade, is not the solution to shortage of rice to coming into the country.
Again, it's not just rice that we're stopping from coming into the country. I know that that all of us are talking about rice so much, but it's not just rice that has been stopped from coming in. Gentlemen, we're going to continue this conversation in a few minutes. We need to take a quick break, a quick commercial break. We'll come back and continue this conversation. Mr. Lasisi, when we come back from the break, I'd like to hear from you why our borders are so porous. Now you're listening to Hard Facts on 99.3 Nigeria Info. I am Sandra Ezekwesili. My guests include the Chief Economist of Business Day, Mr. Nonso Obikili. My second guest does business at the border. He's the Semi-Border Chapter Chairman of Nigeria Customs License Clearing Agents, Mr. Lasisi Fanu. And my third guest is an expert on cross-border trade. He's the head of marketing, Northern Cross-Border Corridor for Oboh. Oboh is a mobile payment platform, Mr. Yusuf Haliru. So join us again after the break. It's going to be 3 minutes long, thereabouts. And when that's done, let's talk about why exactly our borders are so porous and continue to assess this closure that the federal government has initiated.
Hard Facts will be right back. Welcome back to Hard Facts.
All right, Lagos, we're back, and you're listening to Sandra Ezekwesili on 99.3 Nigeria Info. Today, we're talking about Nigeria's decision to close her borders, and we're wondering why this is happening, what the benefits could be, what the strategy is for achieving those goals. Because we've seen a sharp rise in inflation. It's going to affect the cost of goods in the country. The government has said that this measure is for the best because it will encourage domestic production. Yusuf agrees. Nonso, not so much. Lasisi is kind of in the middle. And the government has also accused neighboring countries of using the Nigerian market as a dump and also of violating ECOWAS rules about goods in transit. My guests include an expert on cross-border trade. He's the head of marketing, Northern Cross-Border Corridor for Oboh, a mobile payment platform. His name is Mr. Yusuf Haliru. I also have the SEME Border Chapter Chairman of Nigeria Customs Licensed Clearing Agents, Mr. Lasisi Fanu, as well as the Chief Economist of Business Day, Mr. Nonso Obikili. Before the break, I was asking Mr. Lasisi why our borders are so porous. Can you tell me why, Mr. Lasisi?
Yeah, thank you very much. Concerning the porousness of borders of the nation, we have some borders that are not porous, as others are too porous.
Okay.
Like the border is a straight border. Like the particular time you get to Baji, for instance, it's just a single road. You cannot pass another way with motor from border to come into Badagry before you continue to Lagos. Then the other area that will have so many 101 routes, illegal routes, for government to put a stop into this nefarious activity they are talking about. Let government put up a technology that they will put in place, a drone or whatever government technology they want to use, that when the smuggler or whoever is aware, he knows properly aware that as I'm moving, they are monitoring me, they are seeing me. Wherever I drop that thing, government is coming there with that informant giving any information about it and remove whatever they brought in there. I am sure as a technology monitoring equipment, I know that if I go to smuggle this thing, I'll keep on being monitored through this illegal route, right from wherever I'm coming in from, whichever border it's going to be. And they know that when it's coming, definitely they are monitoring me. As soon as I get to where I will get to, they'll just pounce on me. As a technology device to see all these things. I think that is a perfect thing because woman beings will always remain woman. If an activity is going on for a long time, definitely you don't expect perfection any longer.
I have to come to you now, Nonso. We've been hearing a lot of analysts say that stopping imports of a product will not stimulate the local producers. In fact, you've also said this as well. It will not stimulate them to increase production. They say this is because locals will now have a monopoly and can even raise prices since they have no competitors. And now we hear that the authorities, Benin Republic authorities, are allowing Benin goods to be added to imports coming from other countries into Nigeria via Cotonou. That's the goods in transit. So can you explain why the government has such a grievance with this? Why is this such a problem?
Well, I mean, before I after that, let me just add something to what the previous commenter said.
Yes, go ahead.
Look, we all know our history, right, in Nigeria. Okay. We know that the Nigerian borders were drawn randomly by Europeans. And so they are essentially just a line in the sand in many places. If you go to the borders, you have towns that go from one side in Benin Republic and enter Nigeria. You have places where cousins live in Nigeria, another cousin lives in Benin. You have places where a cousin lives in Nigeria, another cousin lives in Niger. And so the borders geographically make no sense. Right. And then we now have a trade mindset that is very protectionist, which results in having two different prices across the border. You go to Benin, rice is 9,000. You come to Nigeria, rice is 18,000. And we have people who live along these border communities, I can see these price differentials. And so we think that smuggling is some kind of evil or, activity that people do because they don't like the country. But it is because they can see that there are two different prices for the same thing across the border. And if you're poor, why won't you do it? If you have the opportunity to make 2,000 naira per day by carrying one bag of rice from Nigeria to Benin, from Benin to Nigeria, why won't you do it? And so we need to realize that our borders are artificial. And so any kind of trade policy we have needs to be in cooperation with our neighbors. As long as we have two different prices for things like rice, cars, tomato paste between Nigeria and Benin or Nigeria and Niger, we will have smuggling. That's always going to happen. Human beings are very, very, very smart. Human beings know how to jump over any kind of hurdle as long as there's money to be made. Right? So that's and again, we have been focusing on imports, but we also have non-oil exporters who export mostly through the land border. If you look at the last foreign trade report by MBS, half of our non-oil exports go via land, and all that has stopped because the borders are closed. So it's not just a case of we are stopping imports, but also hurting those who are trying to export. And remember, we are saying Nigeria's big economic problem is that we export only crude and we export other things. But those who are trying to export other things are suffering from border closures as well. Right? So it's better that we look at both sides of the story and realize that, look, people who smuggle are not evil, or they're not, just trying to destroy Nigeria. It's only because they can see that there are two different prices for the same thing across the border. And that's the fundamental problem.
I wonder if Yusuf agrees with you, Yusuf.
Well, yes, once there's a price advantage and there's income to be made, between one side and another, I know human beings will always like to take advantage and then move from one part to another. That's number one. Number two, whilst we were on break, I just quickly checked and I saw that total borders around Nigeria in terms of length is 2,515 miles. That's about 4,000 kilometers. That's a lot. In the Republic alone with Nigeria, 768 kilometers. Niger Republic with Nigeria, 1,488 kilometers. That's extremely long. Now, we cannot close our borders forever, yes. We are putting ourselves while trying to save ourselves. In other words, since our non-oil exports, some of them that go through land, are suffering right now, and our farmers are supposed to be enjoying. One can only just hope that in the interim, that the government is doing something that brings all stakeholders together to try to determine and fashion out the way forward, such that once we open, we will not lose too much and we will gain more overall. That's what I can just add to this border closure issue. But it's really long, and human beings cannot do it. So I think technology, from what Alhaji Lasisi has said, technology will be welcome in this regard. I mean, people are are launching drones of their own right all over Nigeria until when the Air Force said it has to be regulated. But that means there must be technology that can be used to monitor and reduce to a large extent the incessant movement of people without regulation across our borders.
No, so we've heard that Benin Republic has urged Nigeria to reopen the border. We've also heard that some in the Ghanaian government have called for retaliation against Nigeria. Does ECOWAS have any mechanisms for resolving this issue?
Well, there's supposed to be a trade dispute mechanism as part of the common external tariff. It's very scanty on details. But technically, if any country has an issue, they're supposed to report it to a council of countries, and then the issue is decided on. I don't think we've done that, but I'm not sure. I haven't checked. But yes, I mean, our land borders are very important, not just for international trade, but for trade with Ghana, with Togo, with Cote d'Ivoire, even sometimes with goods as far as Gambia.
Yeah, Mali.
And Mali. Exactly. Yeah. So when we close the border, we are distorting trade not just for Benin, but for everybody who trades with Nigeria. And of course, everybody complain. If you have beef with Benin, why are you punishing me for it if I'm Ghana? If you have beef with Niger, why are you punishing me in Mali for it? And so everybody is to start to say, look, okay, if this is how it is, then maybe Nigeria is not the reliable country that we hoped it to be. Maybe we should try to look for other options. We start to figure out how to go on our own and not depend on Nigeria. And that's damaging for our reputation.
So do we run the realistic risk of a trade war with our West African neighbors? And who do you think stands to lose the most in that situation?
Oh, definitely. I mean, Ghana has already come out officially to complain that they're going to take their own retaliatory action. Unfortunately, we are the biggest economy in the region, so they kind of all have their tread very lightly. But they will also, of course, they will try to hit us where it hurts. It might not be with something else, but they won't. Most people will accept being hurt by an action that is default and just take it lying down, right? They will look for ways to retaliate. But we are the biggest economy in the region, so we have a lot of leverage. But we need to realize that, look, everybody in the region is suffering from the consequences of these disputes. And we start to see trade not as a me versus you or me. It's not Nigeria or Ghana or Nigeria or Niger. It's Nigeria and Niger. It's Nigeria and Benin. Right? We cannot have a functioning economy if Benin is not a functioning economy. We can all grow together. It's not us or them.
I wonder if Alhaji Lasisi agrees.
I want to agree with it, but I want to say that a country is not an island. You cannot be on your own. You see, it has to be this way because Mr. Thomas and also has said it. It has to be there. Like what he said, if it's not there, it's there. And you don't expect that not to be. So government just need to put up and corridor, what I say, a machinery to dictate what is legal among the best. That is that about that. Then, I don't know if I can make an appeal on this ground now.
Okay.
The appeal I want to personally make as a stakeholder is that majority of our importers, because this period of the year, number period of every year, a period when people want to do one trade or the other, they want to increase their money, they go to bank, they get bank loan overdraft here and there, that the debit interest is running here and there. The people are not aware of this border closure, and government have never pronounced a ban on land border trade before. It's a fault, quote unquote, for the government. When they talk issue of security, fine, everybody agree with it. But in this scenario now, we have some trucks that are trapped within the joint border post. If they are not genuine traders, if they don't have genuine intentions, they cannot be there. Majority of them are made payment to the federal government of Nigeria. These goods they make payment upon. Some of them are destroyed. Some expiring deals that have a closer one might not be very important any longer when they come in if they don't go in with this season period. We are appealing to government because now, indefinitely, when indefinitely, nobody actually knows. January 2020, we don't know. If this is to stay from August to January, that is 5 good months. We are feeling that those ones that are trapped within the border post belong to Nigerians that voted for the government in place now. The government in place should look at that. They have money also been paid. That they have not evacuated the goods before the closure came upon. So we are appealing to government. These people pay money to government. Let them remove what they have and they don't order. We are not saying that anything should come from Cotonou again. Majority of the importers, they are actually making a U-turn of some of those things they have. Those that can do so, those that are Cotonou importers, they are there. Accumulating dividends. Nigerian government should not forget that it is same Nigerian citizens that those things belong to. They never had any prior information. They wouldn't have gone there. They will be out of business. Some of them will die. The children will suffer. We are feeling those things that are trapped here. We have close to 900 trucks now, so that they can put up a corridor, a platform. Join everybody. All security men should do 1-to-1 carton examination for this to those that are paid to be examined and remove their goods to cut shortages now, not to cut losses, not to make profit, or to reduce the amount of losses they will have before the thing.
I have to ask Mr. Yusuf now. We've been hearing for months and years that the Lagos ports are congested, both by trucks on the roads and ships in the harbor, and now we've closed the land ports. Can the ports handle the increased volume of trade that the border closure is bound to cause?
Well, I thought Alhaji Lasisi answered this one better question. Nonetheless, I'll say if our systems, that is, our processes are further fine-tuned, as the Vice President has been doing in regards to the ease of doing business, and the Nigerian Ports Authority can, improve on its methods also. I believe that those cargoes can be handled. And in any case, it's not only Lagos port that we have, and I also know that inland ports are being developed. People are being encouraged to also send, their containers to inland, parts of Nigeria so that they can do their clearing and still hasting. I know there's an inland container port in Kano, and I know that a lot of clearing actually takes place there as well, which is a bit more convenient for some people depending on where they want to take their goods to. So I think that Nigerian ports can, if you ask me, but of course the expert, the Nigerian Citizen Clearing Agent, will talk better about the ports. But I was just going to add one thing, Sandra. I was just going to add something that also said those neighboring countries could hit us back. It is true. But there's one thing I'll say for sure. Anywhere there's population, there's a market. Yes, and the population of Africa is here, in this country. They could feel hot, but they will always look for a way to resolve it so that they can sell their things to us. So we will still remain relevant, but like Nonso said, it's not Nigeria alone. Let's also look at Nigeria, Ghana, Nigeria, everywhere. So it's a general thing.
Nonso, do you agree with Yusuf that the other borders that are being set up will be enough to handle this increased volume of trade that the border closure is bound to cause?
Well, I'm not the expert, but from recent history, we know that a lot of traders had moved to neighboring countries because their home ports were very difficult.
Unfriendly.
And unfriendly. They might be marginally less difficult, but they are still difficult. And even if they manage to handle all the trade, it will come at a cost as well. Of course, if you have no option, then you have to do it, but you're going to add that cost of going to a proper, that's more expensive, to your final price. That comes at a cost to everybody else. So it's, I don't know if they can handle it or not, but even if they can, it will still be problematic. And neighboring countries have become significant parts of the Nigerian economy.
Okay.
Many businesses, many factories depend on imports through Benin, through Togo. I think Togo actually has the largest port complex in West Africa now. And all that comes into Nigeria through the land borders. And so, even though our port might be able to handle some extra, it will come at a cost as well. I think trade, as an economist, we know that trade is very fundamental for economic activity. And so, cutting trade is very detrimental. It's not, given the way our economic has been doing, it's not unheard of that this trade dispute, if it lasts for long, can plunge us back into recession. Right? It's not unheard of. And that would be only our fault. There will be nobody else that we can blame for that.
But I have to ask you, because I've heard analysts on both sides, both inside and outside the government, say for years that one of the reasons our petrol subsidy bill is so high is that marketers are smuggling cheap, subsidized fuel out of the country to make profits abroad. So should we expect that with the border closed, the subsidy bill will drop?
Well, like I said earlier on, if you have two different prices for the same commodity, people will smuggle. If fuel is 145 in Nigeria, but it's 250, 300 in Benin and in Togo and in Niger, people will smuggle the fuel out. You can close the land border, but if the profit margin is enough, someone will try something different. You understand? And so as long as the price differential is there, people will smuggle. And that will show up in the subsidy numbers, of course. The issue is not that people are smuggling. The issue is that you have a price differential. There's a better way to target subsidies than trying to fix the price that's much lower than everybody else. Now, from one of the reports I saw 6 months ago, people were actually, buying fuel, putting it on boats, taking it into the ocean, and then throwing it overboard when the tides are going in, and then the jerrycans float into Benin and float into Niger, and they harvest it from there. They harvest from there. That's ingenious. People, if you can make, think about it, if you can make 100% profits on smuggling, then you can invest 30%, 40% into systems that help your smuggling protocol. And even if you have to buy a submarine to smuggle fuel, you can do it if the price is high enough. And like the former CBN governor said, Israel is Aghogho.
if the price is high enough, you can bribe everybody from Lagos to Benin. You understand? So the issue is not that the issue is that the price differential is too high, and the issue and that is there because we are keeping our prices artificially low. There's a better way to subsidize for give people the money directly. That's the better way. You can monitor that one. You can pay the bank accounts. You can do more transfer, whatever. People will still get the money. If they want to buy for, they can still buy for. But if you insist on having this situation where you have two different prices across the border, then people will always smuggle. It's inevitable.
Alhaji Lasisi, this border closure is not total. There are still parts of the border that are not secure, including the coastal waterways that you mentioned, and Nonso has mentioned, and Mr. Yusuf has mentioned as well. So I have to ask, if the closure isn't stopping the smugglers, and smuggling is one of the major reasons we've closed the borders, is it worth it?
It's not worth it. It's not worth it. That is the answer to that. But I want to go further to say a little on the issue of can Lagos Port accommodate everything, right?
Yes,
now.
Please, go ahead.
One, there are 2 or 3 things government can do, as into the fact that to the bottleneck in clearing process there, if it is reduced, one, if government can find a situation whereby a bottleneck, fine, good. The other one I want to put across is that you don't expect somebody who comes from Togo to come and buy raw material manufactured in Nigeria, in Agbara. Instead of him to go straight by land border to his country, he will now go to Lagos Port with that bottleneck. You do the export, you go to Togo again, you want to clear it out. It's a kind of a system that is not work. It cannot work because you, instead of you to live Agbara, very close to the border here, get your things, pay what you want to pay. 2 days, 3 days, you are in your factory in Togo or Ghana or Ivory Coast. Then go to the bottleneck over there. Before you get there, you know what it means. So these are some of the reasons governments should consider and know that Lagos Port, one, is not total. Land border closure to our export and import, it cannot be. It's not the solution. It's not the solution to curbing smuggling activities.
Okay.
At all.
Gentlemen, thank you so much for your time. That's all the time we have for this conversation. You've been so great. We've had the Chief Economist of Business Day, Mr. Nonso Bikili, on the show, as well as the Chairman of Nigeria Customs Licensed Clearing Agents, the Seme Border Chapter, Mr. Lasisi Fano, Alhaji Lasisi Fano. And we've also had the Head of Marketing for the Northern Cross-Border Corridor for Oboh. Oboh is a mobile payment platform. Gentlemen, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
All right, then. We are currently out of time, and we're also having technical difficulties with our phone lines, so we cannot take your calls. But we're hoping that the phone lines will be back up for I Beg to Differ, because I Beg to Differ today will be very, very good. I promise you that. I'm Sandra Ezekwesili. Hard Facts is the show that you've just listened to. And on the Big Hard Fact, we had a conversation about Nigeria's decision to indefinitely close her borders. I hope you learned a few things. I hope you are more informed than you were going into this conversation at 5. Coming up is the news at 6. After that, I Beg to Differ at 6:15. Don't go away.
Hard Facts will be right back.